Has modern fiction gotten too safe? Um, since the beginning of um of writing, of storytelling, of escapism, there have been exploration into the darker sides of humanity, of the human condition. There has been you know, discussion, glorification, or vilification of mental illness and war and human atrocities. These themes and concepts have been discussed like very often in fiction of all forms, but it feels like, especially in recent times, there's been more of a push to um, keep fiction safer, like, not to have as many stories with teeth. And this morning, I was kind of thinking about examples that sort of buck that, like the very first one that came to mind, obviously. Um, so this is a widely popular franchise that's considered family friendly, right? And it kind of gets a reputation for being like lighthearted kind of um fiction, right? But it deals with themes of slavery, human trafficking, racism, genocide, right? These are things that just happen within the stories. Like and that franchise is Star Wars. Like, you know, discombobulation, like, the Clone Wars in particular, I think is probably the best of the Star Wars shows at kind of examining it a little bit more. Whereas in some of the mainline movies, these themes are mentioned and just sort of brushed off as just a normal part of the universe, and they're not really given any weight. In the Clone Wars, especially like in the early seasons, the clones are treated as disposable because they're clones, and all throughout all of the Star Wars franchise, the droids are treated as machines, right? But but quite often it's sort of hinted at that there's a bit more going on with them. I mean, they have memories, they get wiped, they grow attachments to people that they spend time with. Um, it's not ever explicitly said, but it's greatly implied that the droids are something a bit more than machine. Like even if it's, you know, um even if it's kind of artificially understood, like feelings or opinions, they seem to have them. And they are just melted at times. Like and I mean, even in like some of the earlier movies, there was the cantina on Mos Eisley. There's a sign like droids aren't allowed in here, and it's like what? Like, um, but yeah, these things are just they're just sort of brushed off as as like acceptable, and other like major like franchises, like there are some like Game of Thrones that is just overtly at times edgy, like almost for the sake of it. Like it is unapologetically so, and it was wildly successful. And then, you know, other times, like there was what the mid to late 2000s, there was like the young adults kind of surge of movies. There was Twilight, the Twilight series, The Hunger Games, Divergent. They're, more within that vein, that again like cover really dark themes, but they're kind of brushed off as lighthearted fiction, like it's like, oh yeah, Twilight's movies are for 12-year-olds, people say, but it's like, are they? you know? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think that the point of fiction is escapism, and I think through the exploration of darker themes, and especially like writings about from people like within wartime, right? We can really start to understand humanity a little bit better, and sometimes appreciate it more when it's presented in such a brutal abnormal situation. So like I'm not in any way saying it's a bad thing for a story to have some teeth. I think that it's better to experience these things in theory, like in fiction, as escapism, than to actually have to be confronted with them. And I can't know if real world events had much of an influence on stories being cozier, safer, or if it was like the financial risk of a flop. But I mean, like especially like in the 90s, a lot of movies was just peak noir. There was like a dark, gritty, edgy version of a lot of things, and a lot of really good things, really good movies and games came out of it, like late 90s, early 2000s. Um, uh, Deus Ex, like the game, Dark City, The Matrix. Um, there was an Eon Flux animated show that more closely followed the comics, and then there was a live action version that completely changed the visual tone, but still kept a lot of the dark undercurrent, and it really made the I don't know, it really brought like taking some of the edginess off really brought a focus to the story, the more like questioning of humanity and ethics and and how much information is good to give the general public. Is are you protecting people by hiding information from them, or is it important to be transparent even when it's not a good thing? Like there's some really great themes explored in that movie, and it's just sort of brushed off as just some action movie, like and and there's more times that this is happens, like a lot of the Tim Burton movies are very commercially successful, right? And I mean, like he's a person that it has sort of more of a gothic aesthetic, and you're sort of expecting like more of a dark tone in a lot of his movies. But I mean, like even his earlier ones, like Edward Scissorhands, it was so bright and vibrant and like almost like it almost like appeared like a comedy, but there was some very dark themes explored within it. And I think that it's interesting that people like him are able to find commercial success without being even remotely afraid of exploring deeper and darker themes about humanity, like uh, and I don't even sorry, I don't even just mean Sweeney Todd. I mean like you know even his take on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory still had a bit more depth. I mean, I really adore the Jane Wilder version, and like each interpretation of it has its own merits and everything. But I feel like it was a bit more tragic in the Tim Burton version of it, if that makes any sense. Um, and something that I noticed was like, I'm sorry, during the big surge of um comic books being made into like big budget action movies, right? And some of them they're just fun escapism, right? But some of them have, like, a surprisingly, darker theme to them, like, I mean, that's kind of comics in general, right? On the surface level, it's just big, muscly men, like, going through life and navigating and saving the day, but, once you, like, open it and read them, it's like, a a lot of exploring the inner workings of humanity and understanding what it means to be like a a person navigating through like a confusing world. And I think that they are, you know, the comics themselves are still like really important for younger people like, to read as they're trying to grow up and navigate the world. Because again, like you can have darker themes explored in a safer way through fiction, and I think that that's important. I you know I've heard the expression sunlight is the best disinfectant. You know that being willing to address things that are unpleasant and talk about them is a good way to explore, um, the ethics of them, have a better understanding for people on the opposite side of issues from yourself. So I I'm a big I'm a big fan of stories with more teeth, like with more going on to them, like another another movie, and this is, like, on a smaller scope. I was trying mostly to keep it to, like, big franchises, but, like, I just wanna have an aside. I Heart Huckabees. It's like it was sort of brushed off as this goofy movie. It had, not Clive Owen, what is his name? Jude Law. Jude Law was in it, and, Naomi Watts, and, you know, but, um and, Jason Schwartzman, I think. But it seems like, this, like, goofy movie. Oh, Lily Tomlin was in it. Um, but it explored existentialism, and it presented it in such a small, digestible way that, like, even the average viewer, like, got something from it, and, what a fun way to deliver such a, haunting message about humanity. Like, I really love that one, but, yeah, during I got distracted. During, the big surge of comic books, there was, like the Wonder Woman movie. You think, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. She's gonna have her lasso of truth, and she's gonna, she's gonna have some madcap, and she's going to stop some people from some low risk things," right? You get in and you're like, "Oh, this is like a world war period drama? What is happening?" Like, I was not prepared for that. I enjoyed it, but I was not prepared for it, you know? Like, I thought it was gonna be a very different story going into it. Um, or, during the big, comic, movie, like, boom, there were, adaptations, excuse me, of, The Watchmen or Sin City, things that you wouldn't really expect to be big mainstream movies, and it was kind of nice to see those those get made. I understand, that like Alan Moore would have preferred it stay a comic, but it's still nice that it was introduced to a broader audience, because there's a lot of people that completely dismiss like comics and the stories within them as being childish. But uh, you know um in a childish medium, you're able to explore deeper concepts without the heavy weight of them, and I think that it's a great medium for it, honestly. Let me see. Oh, and of course, in games, right? I'm a big fan of the Elder Scrolls series, and it's sort of memed all over the internet. Like taking an arrow to the knee, or oh, good, you're finally awake. Right? Who who really wants to go down that cart ride again? Or the fact that, like, in most of them, you start out as a prisoner and it starts to be like, "All right, I get you have to start somewhere, but, like, what did we do? Why are we degenerates, Todd Howard?" I'm sorry, but I got a little distracted. Um, but, so in the Elder Scrolls games, there is again, really dark themes. There's cannibalism. There's human sacrifice. There's um like oh, there's a lot of morally dubious side stories side quests that you can decide to do whether or not to get like powerful Daedric artifacts. And most of them take you to a dark place. There's like even like a book that's like a reference to like the Necronomicon where like you go around and collect pieces of the different races of Tamriel to construct a book. Like they went there and and there's some really cool storytelling, and it's just completely shrugged off as oh, it's just some goofy video game franchise, right? And an example that was brought up in the Discord was Pokemon, right? You think, oh, this is just some child's game, right? And it is. But I mean, like, beyond the obvious that there's unsupervised children roaming around collecting sentient beings and having them pit fight each other. Um, there's also like dark connotations to that within the Pokédex descriptions. Like if you I I'm not as familiar with them myself, but like that's really interesting for a child's game, you know? Like, or, let's be honest, a 30-year-old's game at this point, but, it's still interesting that it's kind of dismissed as, lighthearted fiction. Um, there's even like a plot line where, where the main character is like assumed to just be dead, and there's Pokemon that gain power by just siphoning out souls. Like, what? um, and there are game series that like are are sort of as dark as like the entire pretense, right? There's some like indie treasures, like The Binding of Isaac, and Undertale, and uh, Doki Doki Literature Club, right? Like there's Needy Streamer Overload. There's some that are just like these fun, goofy, cartoony games, and they you know they end up being more than you bargained for. Like once you get into the story of them, um, but yeah, I I want to say The Witcher, but unfortunately, while they absolutely weren't afraid to go, a bit, a bit like edgy, a bit brutal, like with the game adaptation and the show. I feel like the show isn't really a good example of what I'm talking about now because while they did absolutely take some risk, they made some questionable choices with their changes to the adaptation. So like I don't really want to say that that's a good example. Um, I'm trying to think if there were more that I was going to mention. What about what about you? What is like an example of fiction that is wildly liked and very successful, but was willing to take some risk with its story, like to explore um themes or just in some cases just stick them in there with no exploration and like hand wave it away. Like, what are some examples you can think of? Like, obviously, there are some that, were just written as such, like, The Sandman, by Neil Gaiman, was made into a Netflix adaptation, and, he's not a man who is afraid to explore those themes whatsoever. So like that, you can't really like say that that's like slipped in there. That's more of like kind of the focus. Um, but I mean, Batman or Arrow, like, they seem on the surface like just, big superhero movies or shows, but then they end up like exploring a lot more about humanity within them. Like, but yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts. Take care.